This is Rus, one of the most influential states of medieval Europe, and this is the creator of the Russian Empire, Pyotr I, a reformer, a Europeanizer, and he did not speak any Russian. How can it be, you will ask? Shortly, this empire wasn't any Russian, and the language we now call Russian isn't either. Where starts Muscovy? This is a Golden Horde. 85% of the population spoke various Turkic languages. These guys lived in yurts, also mobile ones, ate mainly meat. They loved to ride and fight on horseback. Could be generous to conquered people if they recognized their authority without resistance and paid tribute. But if not, the Golden Horde used total terror and mass executions as a tool of intimidation. This helped them control vast areas with relatively small garrisons. If the city resisted, its population was often completely exterminated, and the survivors were taken into slavery. These lovely folks had a couple know-how: human shield. During the siege of cities, hordes often used prisoners as human shields, forcing them to go ahead of the attack. Population measurement by saddle. In some cases, commanders ordered the beheading of all men who were taller than the rider's saddle. This method was applied to conquered peoples in order to eradicate future warriors. Living table enemies could be placed under wooden floors during feasts, which symbolized complete humiliation and domination over them. This demonstrated the absolute power of the hordes and was used for intimidation. This is the land of Moksha, populated by Finno-Ugric people. Their everyday life has traditionally been shaped by agriculture, animal husbandry, and crafts. Muscovy, created in the 13th century by Khan Mengu Timur Ulus province of the Golden Horde, with the main city of Moscow on the territory of Moksha. Muscovite rulers were so successful in collecting tribute from their own lands for the benefit of the Khan that the Ordinians began to entrust them with the collection of tribute from neighboring territories as well. All this activity was carried out, of course, for a percentage of what was collected. Muscovite princes supported the correct Khans, helping them fight for power in the horde, then used military assistance of grateful Khans to destroy enemies of Muscovy. Using the system of governance and taxation of the horde, Muscovians amassed resources and built their own army to conquer neighbors. In the 15th century, when the Golden Horde began to fall, Moscow was forced to retreat under the rule of the Crimean Khan. The Khans, or the Golden Horde, or the Crimea, did not interfere in the affairs of the vassals as long as the tribute was properly received. During the next 2 centuries, Muscovy continued successfully increasing its territory, and at the end of the 17th century, its rulers, having felt the power, gradually stopped paying tribute to the Crimean Khan. After the Great Northern War of 1700 to 1721 was a turning point for Muscovy, shifting it from a landlocked, medieval state into a major European power with access to the sea, gaining significant territorial and strategic advantages, paving the way for its future expansion and influence. The war ended Sweden's status as the leading power in Northern Europe, while New Russia became the dominant force in the region. The name Ukraine was claimed for the first time in the 12th century, but it became widely used thanks to Cossacks only in the 17th century. Previously, all the time, the name of Ukraine was Rus. Only when Ukraine lost its independence to Muscovy in 1709, during the Great Northern War, it became possible to steal its history and name. When European monarchs were crowned by the Pope and recognized by everyone as the legitimate rulers of their lands. The Tsardom had territories and military strength, but it was an underdeveloped entity on the edge of Europe. Tsar Pyotr Alexeyevich also wanted prestige and recognition. He made reforms in order to bring his country closer to the level of European states. He built a new capital, naming it Petersburg in his honor. But the country created and maintained for centuries under its rule by the Ordinians glaringly lacked a glorious history. The history of the one state from which the East Roman Empire preferred to buy off rather than fight, with which European monarchs happily concluded dynastic marriages, whose capital at the height of its power was larger than that time London or Paris, one like Rus Ukraine, which was already in the hands of the Tsar. Pyotr organized a grandiose import of an educated people from Ukraine, where at that time many educational institutions were developed. What could not be said about Muscovy? This is Feofan Prokopovich, the Tsar's main ideologist, a Ukrainian theologian, writer, poet, mathematician, philosopher, translator, publicist, scientist, humanist, rector of the Kiev Mohyla Academy. He came up with a grand idea to rename Tsardom of Muscovy into an empire, but not just any empire, but the All-Russian Empire. By order of the Tsar, Feofan Prokopovich was awarded the highest church rank, head of the Russian Orthodox Church, also fake, like the all-Russian things we speak today. In Europe, such a renaming was met with distrust, sometimes with derision. Generation had to change before the Europeans adopted the name of the Russian Empire. But there was one problem. If not to take into account Ukrainian lands, almost nobody in the newborn Russian Empire actually spoke Russian. Majority of the population spoke native Finno-Ugric languages, with many Turcic words. 60% of the nobility were Turkic-speaking Horde people descendants. But the 17th century is the epoch of the brilliance of French culture. French was the language of interstate communication, and the nobility of the empire preferred to speak French. Rulers had to do something with it. For this, Empress Ekaterina II created in 1783 the Russian Academy, which had to develop a new language on the basis of Old Slavonic, which is basically Old Bulgarian, the official language of Rus. Like Latin was the language of the Catholic Church, and official in many countries of Europe, Old Bulgarian was the same thing in Orthodox Christianity world. Ekaterina was German. So to the Russian Academy, like to the other state institutions, many Europeans, mostly Germans, were invited. Ekaterina's pseudo-scholars took out of Kiev and the whole Ukraine a huge number of books that were related to the study of this language. For 11 years, they inspiredly were taking Old Slavic vocabulary from Ukrainian books and transliterated many German and French words. In 1794, the Dictionary of the Russian Academy, arranged in alphabetical order, was created. It contained about 43,000 words, as well as examples of usage from the works of Muscovite writers of the 18th century. Muscovites consider Mikhail Lomonosov, naturalist, historian, artist, poet, who studied Old Slavonic at the Kiev Mohyla Academy, to be the creator of the Russian language. But Lomonosov is an ordinary plagiarist. He actually rewrote Ukrainian Smotritsky's grammar, which he studied in Kiev, and published it under the title Russian Grammar in 1755. Rus is a medieval state on the territory of modern Ukraine and Belarusia. Ukraine in translation means just the land, and was used to mark main principalities of Rus, including Kievan. Belarusia means White Russia, and used to mark principalities to the north of Ukraine. In Rus, they spoke a language which came to nowadays as Ukrainian and Belarusian. These two languages are that similar to each other that Ukrainian can understand 90% of Belarusian speech, hearing it for the first time. Muscovites understand these two languages very badly. Rus or Russia are the names of Ukraine. While Ukraine and Muscovy were one state, they took Ukraine's history and copied the language. They wanted to take the capital as well. Considered to move the capital of the empire to Kiev 3 times. Only the hostile attitude of the local population hindered this from happening. But in the 20th century, Ukraine managed to break free from the empire, and now it can claim its heritage. Muscovites cannot allow this. As long as Ukraine exists, the original Russia exists. To successfully pass off a fake as an original, the original must be destroyed. Calling Muscovy Russia, you support this scam of Muscovites. Passing off someone else's property as their own. Appropriation of not only the name, but the entire history. A scam that justifies invasion and the genocide of Ukrainians, which is happening right now.